Shalom, shalom. Hey, I'm back. I want to do another video. First and foremost, I want to say happy prep day to everybody prepping today. Today is May 25th, 2025. On the calendar side, which is a lunisolar calendar, Genesis 1:14. Today is the prep day for the last Sabbath of the second biblical month, which begins tomorrow at the rising of the sun, being the 29th day. So I just want to do a video real quick and show the count as far as where we're at concerning Pentecost, because we are in the midst of counting the omers for Pentecost. Pentecost is the next biblical feast that will take place. And I know that it's already been some people that have already kept the feast of Pentecost, or what they in their understanding of to what Pentecost is. But according to scripture, there's no way that Pentecost has taken place as of yet, because Pentecost represents two things. It represents the giving of the law and outpouring of the Ruach HaKodesh. And so at this point, if anybody has kept Pentecost as of now, that is out of context, that is not according to scripture, because like I said, it represents the giving of the law and the outpouring of the Ruach HaKodesh. The Israelites did not receive the law until they came into Mount Sinai. So if anybody, and that was on the 18th day of the third month. So if anybody has kept Pentecost prior to that date, then according to scripture, you have not kept Pentecost according to scripture. So I just want to go into scripture and give a little understanding, a little edification on this, and show the count as to where we're at. So I'm going to pick it up at Leviticus 23 and verse 1. And it says, "And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahuwah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even these are my feasts." So all of the feasts that we're instructed to keep, as far as the Most High is concerned, is listed here in Leviticus 23. And we've been taught that there's 7 feasts, but in actuality it's 8 feasts, because the very first one listed here is our weekly Sabbath. But I'm going to drop down to verse 5, rather. It says, "In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahuwah's Passover." So we know that the Passover is the 14th day of the month of Abib, and the dates, the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th, is very important to understand, because once we understand these dates, there's a lot of things that take place surrounding these dates in scripture. So once we understand the significance of these dates, other things will fall into place. So it says the 14th day of the first month at even. So what we have to understand is that Hamashiach was crucified and buried on the 14th, right? So verse 6 says, "And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahuwah. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread." So the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a Sabbath. It's the 15th day of the first biblical month. It is a Sabbath, and it is confirmed under a full moon. Every 15th day of every biblical month is a full moon. And Psalms 89:37 says that the moon is a faithful witness in the Shamaim. So the 15th day is the sign of the feast, which is telling us that it is a Sabbath, being the 15th day. So I just want to make a point of that. So I'm going to drop down to verse 10. It says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye come into the land, when ye be come into the land, which I give unto you, and ye shall reap the harvest, therefore then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruit of your harvest unto the priest." So I just want to make a point of this too, because it said, you shall reap the harvest, because you have to understand is that all of the feasts that's listed in Leviticus 23 requires us to bring an offering. So when it's talking about the first fruits, this is a feast. This is not a feast that we do anything, but this is a feast. It's very significant, because the first fruit is the day, the third day that Hamashiach rose from the sepulchre, or rose from the grave. So it's not calling for us to do anything, but it is telling us that this is a feast listed here. And the significance for this is that this is the day that Hamashiach rose from the grave. So it says, "Reap the harvest, ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruit of your harvest unto the priest." because a lot of people teach and they try to lump this together with Pentecost, and these are two completely different feasts that require two completely different offerings or two completely different harvests, because it says to bring a sheaf of the first fruit. So when it comes to the first fruit, the sheaf that we're bringing, the harvest is a barley harvest. 2 Kings 4 and 42. 2 Kings 4 and 42, and it says, and there came a man from Balashalasia and brought the man of Yahuwah bread of the first fruit, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, give unto the people that ye may eat. So the first fruit offering or the harvest for the first fruit is a barley offering, opposed to Pentecost, which is a wheat offering. So let me show that too. Exodus 34 and 22. Exodus 34 and 22. Exodus 34 and 22. And it says, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruit of wheat harvest. So although first fruit and Pentecost is two completely different feasts, both require a harvest, both require an offering. First fruit requires an offering of the sheaf of the barley, and Pentecost requires us to bring a harvest of wheat. So these are two completely different feasts. So I know I've seen people teach that where they teach it's one and the same, but it's not. And so Leviticus 23 and verse 11, it says, and ye shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. So I just want to show this because, like I said, knowing the importance of the dates of the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th makes things easier to comprehend when it's talking about scripture. So again, Hamashiach was crucified and buried on the 14th being the Passover. The very next day or the morrow after the Passover is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which starts at the rising of the sun. That is the Sabbath. So when it says, you shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted on the morrow after the Sabbath that's referring to is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The morrow being the very next day at the rising of the sun is the Feast of First Fruit. So again, it's not something that we have to do, but it is significant because when you're talking about Hamashiach, like I said, he was crucified and buried on the 14th. He rested on the sepulchre on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the Sabbath, and he rose the third day being the first fruit. So I just want to make that point, right? And when another significant thing about these dates, the 14, 15, and 16, is that the 16th is the first day, when you see in scripture it says the first day of the week. What that means is that it's the first of our 6 work days. So after the new moon, the very next day is the first day of the week. So this is the first of our 6 work days before the first biblical Sabbath. So the very next day after the Sabbath is the first day of the week, which is the first of our 6 work days for the Sabbath. So another point we see, like I made before, the 9th to the 14th is the 6 work days. The 14th is the Passover, but it's the 6th work day being a prep day for the actual Sabbath, which is the 15th. So when it says the morrow after the Sabbath in reference to the first fruits, that's talking about the 16th. And so it's saying that because it's the first day of our 6 work days. So this is where our count starts for our Omer towards Pentecost, is what that's saying. So verse 15 says, and ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So the morrow after the Sabbath, when we brought the wave sheaf, is the 16th. This is where our count starts. So this is the first week in our count towards Pentecost. The very next day after the Sabbath is the first day of the week. This is the second week in our count towards Pentecost, right? So this is what this is saying. So this is why understanding the calendar of the Most High, Genesis 1:14, is very important, and also understanding the three types: moon day, 6 work days, and then our Sabbaths being 8, 15, 22, and 29. So another thing for sure about the calendar of the Most High, if we read in scripture that the new moon day is always the first day of the month, then it only makes sense that the Sabbath dates are also the same as well. So it also makes sense that the prep days also are the same dates: 7, 14, 21, and 28. Just like the first day of the week is always going to be the same dates: the 2nd, the 9th, the 5th, the 16th, and the 23rd. So it makes it, this calendar is very simple. And once you understand the calendar, it's very easy to understand. It's very easy to line the scriptures up with this calendar. So I just wanted to make a point of that. So so it says, verse 15 again, and you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day you brought the sheaf of your wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So today, well, tomorrow at the rising of the sun brings us to our 6th Sabbath complete in our count towards Pentecost. So I just want to show that as well. Um, um, okay. So where we're at today, when it says the tomorrow after the Sabbath, again, that's the 16th to the 22nd. That's our first week. The 23rd to the 29th, that's our second Sabbath, and our 7th Sabbath complete. So the 2nd to the 8th is the 3rd, the 9th to the 15th is the 4th, the 16th through the 22nd, which was last Shabbat, was the 5th Sabbath complete. Tomorrow at the rising of the sun would be the 29th day of the 2nd biblical month. That would be the 6th Sabbath complete in our count towards Pentecost. So this is what this is saying. So another point, since I have this calendar up, when Jubilee 6:23, it says that there's 4 divisions in the sun, meaning spring, summer, fall, and winter. You see here it says spring. So each season lasts 3 months. This is, and the sun is 30, 30, 31. This is 3 months or 91 days. 91 times 4 is 364 days in the sun. So we see here that as far as Pentecost is concerned, the 7th Sabbath complete is always going to be the first Sabbath of the 3rd biblical month. So by the count, when people count 7 Sabbaths complete, and then they say the very next day is Pentecost, that would be numerically the 9th day. But it makes absolutely no sense because, like I said, when we read Exodus chapter 19 and 1, and let me go over there real quick. Exodus chapter 19 and 1. Exodus 19 and 1, it says, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. So when it says the same day came they in the wilderness of Sinai, because our forefathers and foremothers left out of Egypt on the 15th day of the 1st biblical month. So when it says they came into the wilderness of Sinai on the same day, they're talking about the 15th day. So for those that say that they're counting it 7 Sabbaths complete, and then the very next day would be the 50th day, and that count and that understanding would be the 9th day. But we see in Exodus chapter 19 and 1 that they did not get into Mount Sinai until the 15th. So if Pentecost represents the outpouring of the Ruach HaKodesh and the giving of the law, then scripturally there is no way that that count can be correct, because counting the 50th day is prior to them getting into Mount Sinai. And as we further read that scripture, we see that Moses went up on the mount on the 18th, being 10 days in our count towards the 50 days. So at that point, we're still 40 days away from the Feast of Pentecost. So if anybody has kept Pentecost even prior to this date, that is out of season. But for those that are saying 7 Sabbaths complete, or 7 times 7 is 49 in a day, here it is no way that is Pentecost, because they didn't get to Mount Sinai until the 15th day. So that is impossible that Pentecost has already taken place. So I just want to make that point of that as well. So what you have to understand is that, like I said, it's talking about seasons, right? So these feasts take place in specific seasons. So let me show this as well. I'm trying to go to this, but let me go to this as well. So when it's talking about 3 times in a year shall all males appear, there's 3 feasts that take place in the spring. That is Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruit. That is in the spring. This is when this takes place. When it's talking about Pentecost, Pentecost takes place in the summer. We have to understand that. And that count 7 Sabbaths complete in the next day keeps us still in the same season as Passover, unleavened bread, and feast of and first fruit. That is not what Scripture is telling us to do. So we have to understand that. So I just want to make a point of that, and just wanted to do a quick video, and just to show where we're at as far as the count is concerned. So tomorrow, the rising of the sun, is the last Sabbath of the second biblical month. It is also the 6th Sabbath, and our 7th Sabbath complete. So one last thing as well, we have to understand that our 7th Sabbath complete, like I said, is always going to be the first Sabbath in the 3rd biblical month. So I just want to show this. So after tomorrow's Sabbath, we have one more week in our count. So that's going to be the 7th Sabbath complete is going to be here. And as it says in Leviticus 23 and verse 16, it says, it instructs us, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall be, even after the morrow of the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahuwah. So it's telling us that after our 7th Sabbath complete, it's telling us the morrow, meaning the next day. At that point, this is where our count starts towards the Feast of Pentecost. So like I said, they didn't, according to Exodus chapter 19 and 1, they got into Mount Sinai on the 15th. It tells us there that the Most High told Moses to sanctify the people 3 days. He sanctified them 3 days. Moses also goes up on the 18th. Well, if you count from the 8th, you count from the 9th day when it says to start the count, this is 7 days. It goes up on the mount on the 18th, that's 10 days. So at that point, we're now 40 days away from the Feast of Pentecost. And so when we count it correctly, when we count the Pentecost correctly, the Pentecost is always going to end up in the summer month, because it's a summer harvest. When it said the wheat harvest, wheat takes place in the summer. This is when this is talking about. So we have to understand that. And I just wanted to do a video on that just to show that real quick. Basically just to show where we're at and where the count is at. So, but other than that, I just want to say for everybody that's prepping today, happy prep day, Shabbat Shalom for those keeping the Sabbath tomorrow. And just trying to put out some information, just trying to help with some understanding, help with some edification as far as these scriptures is concerned. So I pray that for those that have ears to hear and eyes to see, that it's reaching those who have Most High will have to get the understanding we'll get it, and we can all just rejoice before the Most High at the same time, according to his calendar, which is Genesis 1:14, which is a lunisolar calendar, because you have to remember, he said he told us to meet him at his appointed times. He never told us that he would meet us at our appointed times. And if we're keeping it according to a Gregorian calendar and Saturday and reconciling the feast according to that calendar, that would be our appointed times. And the Most High is not obligated and will not show up to anything that's outside of his word. If it's not written in his word, he is not gonna adhere to it. It says he wrote the word with his finger, and it said he placed the word above his name, and it will not return unto him again void, that it will accomplish that which is set out to do. So with that, I say shalom.